I just filmed the majority of this video and I have to restart it because I was sitting here the whole time. I need to be here so I can have the book here. God darn it! Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today for another Star Wars related video for Star Wars month, I thought I would share with you guys my favorite Star Wars books. So I've read so many Star Wars books. I absolutely love reading Star Wars books. I've read some really crappy ones. I've read some amazing ones. So I wanted to tell you guys my favorites. This will not include any books that were directly based on one of the main 9 films. I have read all 9 of those. I really loved all of them. And if you are looking to expand your kind of like knowledge and just what you know about Star Wars, but you don't want to go too far into the Star Wars universe, I would recommend reading the 9 books, because obviously when you're watching a movie, you can't hear what characters are thinking. And these books really like show you like exactly what characters are thinking and tell you what they're thinking. And so I loved that. I thought it gave so much more to each story. I loved reading the main 9 books based on the main 9 movies. But the Star Wars universe is ginormous. There are so many characters. There's so many shows and things out right now. Like, I guarantee you, if you have like a favorite character or something from a Star Wars movie or TV show or something, I guarantee you there's a novel based on what's going on. There's one story I want a novel on so bad. I don't know who I would ask to write it because there are several authors who have written so many incredible Star Wars books. One story that I haven't seen, if it's out there, please let me know. But I would love to see a story about Ben Solo, like when he first starting before he goes to train with Luke, and then just what goes on in his mind and stuff that eventually leads him to the dark side. I would love a novel about that. I do think there's a comic about that, but I'm not super into comics, but I would read that comic. I would love, 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 love a novel that tells us that story. Like I said, if there is a specific character or something that you love from the Star Wars universe, there's probably a book about it because the universe is so ginormous. There's a book on my list here that literally is the story of something that got one single line in Revenge of the Sith. I'll explain when I get to it. Let's begin. I'm going to move to the side this time. Don't make the same mistake twice. So the first 2 that I'm going to talk about, these are by far my favorite Star Wars books. And I really can't pick which of these 2 I love more. I love them both so much. So the very first one is Dark Disciple by Christie Golden. So this was probably, I think, the first Star Wars book I read that wasn't like based on one of the movies. This book takes place during the Clone Wars, and it follows the assassin Asajj Ventress. At this point, she has been betrayed by Dooku, and she is essentially trying to find him and kill him. And the Jedi decide to send in the Jedi Quinlan Vos to team up with her, and the 2 of them take down Dooku. I freaking love this book. Like, my friend described this book to me, and I was like, I'm hooked. Sounds amazing. Getting it on Audible this very second, because it is a love story. Obviously, it's a Star Wars book, so there's a ton of action and stuff going on, but it is also a love story. It is Quinlan and Asajj's love story, and it is so beautiful. I loved the story that they got, and the ending is so incredible. It is so absolutely heartbreaking. But certain things that happen, I'm not going to spoil anything. I will give you just like a brief like little summary, but I'm not going to spoil anything, so don't worry about that. But something does happen in this book that is so heartbreaking, and then the way it ends is, like I said, just even more heartbreaking, but it is so beautiful and so amazing, and I loved this book. Then the second book on my list that is, again, like tied for first place with Dark Disciple is Shadow of the Sith by Adam Christopher. When I heard about this book, I was so excited because this book really gives you so much more information that leads you into the Rise of Skywalker. So this book falls about 16, 17-ish years after Return of the Jedi, and it follows Luke Skywalker. At the very beginning of the book, he is beginning to establish his Jedi training. We actually get to meet a young, like 16-year-old Ben Solo in this book. That is very brief in the book, but for the most part, we are following Luke and Lando as they go to Pasaana and they try to find Ochi of Bassoon. So if you remember Ochi of Bassoon from The Rise of Skywalker, he was the one who was searching for Rey to bring her to Palpatine. He found Rey's parents, but not Rey. He killed them. So this is that story. So we get the bit of Lando and Luke for the majority of the book, but then also intermingled with that plot is the plot of Rey's parents, her mom and her dad. We get to learn so much about them, and then we get to see them trying to escape and protect Rey and get her somewhere, which we all know eventually leads them to Jakku. So this one does obviously kind of spoilers because we know what happens to them because of Rise of Skywalker, but there is still so much more that happens in this book, and there's just so much we learn. It's so heartbreaking. So this one does obviously kind of spoilers because we know what happens to them because of Rise of Skywalker, but there is still so much more that happens in this book, and there's just so much we learn. It's so heartbreaking. We also see Ochi treating Dio so terribly. Like if you remember in The Rise of Skywalker, when we meet Dio, he is so petrified of anyone, and we see that because we see how terrible Ochi treated him. I loved this book. It is one of my favorites. So those two are by far my favorite Star Wars books that I have ever read, and I love them. So then the rest of these books are in no particular order of favorite to least favorite. Every book on this list I gave either a 3.5 or higher rating to. I went through my entire Goodreads, went through every Star Wars book that I have read, and anything that got that score or higher is on this list. So the rest of these are in no particular order of favorite to least favorite or anything. Let's just get started. So the first book is A Crash of Fate by Zoradana Kadova. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. There's a few books, actually the first 3 books I'm going to talk about, that are kind of like the Black Spire series. These books really introduce us to the Black Spire outpost on the planet Batuu, which, if you weren't aware, Batuu is the planet that you go to when you go to Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland and Disney World. So it was really cool reading these books because I've been to those places, so I have seen all of Galaxy's Edge, and the Black Spire outpost is where the food is and all the shops are, and it was just so cool to know what they were talking about when they were mentioning all these places. So Crash of Fate follows 2 characters, Izzy and Jules, who were best friends growing up, but then I think when they were 6 years old or something, Izzy's parents took her in the middle of the night and they left Batuu with no word to anybody, but then somehow through fate, they end up meeting up again on Batuu. The 2 of them go through a whole journey together. They essentially fall back in love with one another. This book really has nothing to do with any other Star Wars story except for a specific thing that happens at the very end of the book. None of the characters in this book have we met in any other capacity, movies or anything. There's no one in this book that you could be yes, I remember that character from episode 8 or anything like that. But it is still a very cute story. This is definitely one of the more child-friendly books. There's a couple books I have on here that are definitely a preteen teenager could definitely enjoy. It's a very easy burn. It was just a very cute book. I really liked it. And then the next book, this is probably the least of the like I said, the Black Spire books, but this was Phasma by Delilah Dawson. I actually bought this book for my friend Tori 1,000 years ago, and initially I thought it was going to be a visual encyclopedia type of a book on Phasma, and I bought it for her because Phasma is her favorite character from the sequel trilogy. But then when I got it, I realized it was a novel and it was a fictional story, which she obviously still read. and she told me I should read because she loved it so much. So I finally got it and gave it a try, and this obviously follows Phasma, and it is her life prior to joining the First Order. And I think I've talked about this book before on my video, but this was by far the most gruesome Star Wars book I have ever read. Now, Star Wars is not gruesome. It's not horribly gruesome or anything. It is definitely not anything near any sort of like splatterpunk book or anything like that, but characters die in very brutal ways. There is a literal gladiator scene during this book. Be prepared for that. This one is definitely more young adult book, but it was so good. And if you liked Phasma in episode 7 and 8, then I would definitely recommend this book because it just gives you so much more insight on who she was and just how terrible of a person she was even before she joined the First Order. I loved this book. I thought it was so good. Just like a very good like villain origin story. I loved it. So like I said, this one is technically like part of the like Black Spire stories, but this one really doesn't take place at all on Black Spire. However, you do need to read it first if you're going to read this next book, which is called Black Spire by Delilah Dawson. So this follows the character of Vi, and she is sent to Batuu with another character to essentially establish and build a rebellion camp. If you have been to Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland or Disney World, there is specifically the ride Rise of the Resistance. So I like to think in my own mind that that is the camp that Vi and this other character built. And I'm not saying too much about this other character because it is a spoiler for Phasma, who this character is. So I don't want to say too much about them. Just know that I really liked this book. I think I liked it maybe a smidgen more than Phasma, only because it wasn't as violent, it wasn't as brutal, and I really liked the characters in this book. I thought they were fantastic. Then the next book on my list is A New Dawn by John Jackson Miller. This book follows Kanan Jarrus when he very first meets Hera Syndulla, which if you watch the TV show Rebels, you know who they are. If you don't know what that show is, you have no idea who these people are. But I loved Kanan and I loved Hera from Rebels. They were probably my favorite characters in the show. And so I did not even need to know what this book was about when I first started reading it. I literally just saw Kanan and Hera on the cover and I was like, yep, sounds good. I will be reading that. So this follows, like I said, Kanan before he first meets Hera. So obviously Ghost Squadron has not been established yet. And it just follows him trying to get through life as a Jedi who survived Order 66. And then he meets Hera, falls instantly in love with her because she's so gorgeous. And they just go on their way with shenanigans. And it's honestly been a really long time, so I don't know exactly what goes on in this book. It's been a really long time since I read it, but I know I really liked it. And then the next book is Master of Evil by Adam Christopher. So this was another Adam Christopher book that I literally just finished today. I just finished it today and I was like, I liked that. It's going on the list. By that point, I had enough books that I was like, okay, I'm going to finally make this video. This is more than enough books to talk about. This briefly follows, he's actually more of a side character. It follows a very new Darth Vader. I'm always very hesitant about reading anything that's like too prequel-y because I'm not a big fan of politics, and the prequels are obviously the most political of any of like the trilogies or anything like that. So I haven't read them yet, but I have the like Queen's Hope trilogy. I have those books and I want to read them. I just have to very much be in the mood to read that. I also really wanted to read the Thrawn books because, like I said, I loved Rebels, but Sam read the first one and told me he doesn't think I would like it because it's extremely political and very like war heavy and like a lot of like war tactics and planning, and that's just not my jam. The Thrawn books I probably won't read I hope I can read the Queen books eventually, but anyway, I'm very cautious about reading anything too prequely, and I always have to read a lot of like reviews and comments about this. But I was like, okay, this sounds good. It's about Darth Vader. It's written by Adam Christopher, who wrote one of my favorite Star Wars books. Let's give this a try, and I'm so glad I did. So for the most part, this does follow an ISB officer named Halland Goth, and it follows him. He's been assigned to essentially figure out who the heck Darth Vader is, because Darth Vader just kind of like came on the scene. No one really knows who he is. At one point, they even like think that Darth Vader brainwashed the Emperor, obviously not knowing actually what happened between Anakin and Palpatine and stuff. The ISB is kind of like hesitant of who is this Darth Vader. And then there's also stuff going on with Goth that he has his own like personal reasons he wants to find and like learn, not find, because Darth Vader's right there for them, but he wants to learn more about Darth Vader. Like there's something particular about Darth Vader that he is very, very personally interested in and wants to know more about. I hate the fact that this had me rooting for the bad guys. For the most part, everyone in this book is bad guys. It's Darth Vader. It's an ISB officer. It's the clones who have obviously been Order 66. Why was I rooting for them? Why was I sad at the end of the book when something very tragic happened? Like, I finished this book and I'm like, oh, I feel so conflicted right now. Like, I just think that proves how good of a book this was, because, like, I normally don't cheer for Darth Vader. I watched Andor and I was like, down with the ISB. And the fact that this book had me rooting for an ISB officer, I'm like, wait, what's going on? Okay, back to some smutty books now. Okay, 2 more books to go and then I am all done. So the next book is Brotherhood by Mike Chen. So remember how I said there was a specific line in one movie and there's a whole book about that one line? Well, this is it. So in Revenge of the Sith, when Anakin and Obi-Wan return to Coruscant with the Chancellor who they just rescued from Dooku, Anakin gets off the shuttle and then Obi-Wan stays on the shuttle and he says, hey, are you not coming? Blah, 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 blah. And then Anakin says, okay, but you owe me one. And then Obi-Wan says something, and then he says, that business on Pneumonia? I don't remember. Doesn't count. So this book was the business on Pneumonia. I don't know. This was that book. This is what happened. This is what Obi-Wan doesn't count, but does count to Anakin as something that Obi-Wan owes him for. So as I said, I am very cautious going into prequel books, because I'm very cautious about the amount. Well, I'm cautious any Star Wars book, but specifically the prequel books, I'm very cautious about how much politics are going to be in this book. So there was obviously still politics in this book, but this book did have 2 of my favorite things that are part of the prequel series. And that's 1, the relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin. I absolutely love their brotherhood. I love the 2 of them. I think they are such great characters, and I love the dynamic that the 2 of them have. And then the second favorite thing about the prequels is Anakin and Padme being so obvious about their secret relationship. There was so many moments in this book that I was like, Anakin, stop it. You are making it so bloody obvious to everybody that you and Padme are secretly married. Like, you need to calm down. This book, it had me laughing several times. I just love Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship. It's one of the most like heartbreaking relationships, not even like romantic relationship, obviously. Like, obviously there are so many romantic relationships in Star Wars that are just so heartbreaking. There's even just being a platonic relationship is by far the most heart-wrenching in the entire saga, and I just love seeing like the early stages of things before Anakin went to the dark side, and just seeing how much they like truly loved each other and valued each other as brothers. And then the very last book on this list, this is the second book on this list that I think very young children can read. I think I bought this book. I think I have it downstairs, and it actually like is really short. It's very easy to read. So like I think like a young kid getting into Star Wars up to teenagers would really enjoy this book. And I mean, obviously it's on my list, so obviously I enjoyed it. But this was Force Collector by Kevin Shinick. This book, I believe, takes place before The Force Awakens, when the First Order has been established. And this follows a character named Carr, who kind of realizes that he is Force sensitive. However, he's grown up in a very First Order heavy world where we don't talk about the Force. We don't talk about JedI's. And there's even like times when he mentions that he thought he heard a rumor or a legend about these people who could move things with their minds, but we don't talk about that. And him and another character go on an adventure together, and they actually do also end up on Batuu. Obviously, this is before the events of Phasma or Black Spire. A resistance base has not been set up yet, but he goes there. He's Force sensitive in the same way of like Quinlan Voss, where he can like touch something and it gives him the memories that that item has, and he receives certain items that we know from the films. And I thought it was really cool seeing those things. This would be a really cool like kind of like Skeleton Crew type of a show where it's like younger characters. It's maybe made for like a younger audience. Like I think this could be a really cool show. If anybody is looking to sign me on to help with a show or anything like that, I think it'd be really cool because I really liked like the adventure that these characters go on, and I thought it was really cool. But anyway, those are my favorite Star Wars books. I've read several. I have a few that I really didn't like, and obviously I have some that I loved. I will always continue reading Star Wars books, and I will also always continue reading Reylo books because I just will, and you can't stop me. That is going to be it for now. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, I would love it if you would like and subscribe. I post new videos every single Friday, and I'd love to have you here. Thanks for watching. May the Force be with you.